because I feel like studying things like history and politics and philosophy are the things that allow us to gain the critical thinking skills we need to properly push back against like the oppressive systems that we have in place in this country. I'd rather keep it real with ya. Moving on to why college can be a good thing. I started with the negative because people love negative. People love to like rant and complain about stuff. Not to say that it's not a valid complaint. It's all valid complaints. But I know that a lot of people are like, I just want to, scream into the void about how shitty this situation is. Here's why it can be a good thing. And I'm going to use my personal experience. Because despite the fact that I have student loan debt that is constantly knocking at my door, and I do make the minimum payments, and the interest always outweighs whatever money I put into it. I don't regret going to college because of the college I went to. So like I said earlier, I specifically went to a college that was predominantly white, which kind of where I lived automatically meant that they would be higher class, like upper class, wealthy white people. But I specifically went to that college because I knew that the quality of education I would get would be better than if I went to one of the state schools or the community colleges in my area. Because if it's good enough for upper class white people, it's good enough for me. The other thing that was really good about it for me, and I've spoken about this in Discord, is that I came from a very abusive, dysfunctional family where we were all trapped in a circle of poverty. I'm talking poverty, like not even making minimum wage. If you made minimum wage, you were doing something right. You were great, I'm talking multiple generations live in the same household, a lot of family members living in the same house, people not moving out when they got over the age of 18. My uncle was in his 50s living on in my grandmother's house. Like a lot of us making, my sister made $2 an hour for years, and she's 8 years older than me. So to make even $9 an hour was like, oh my God, like you got a great job. You know what I mean? And so it was very much like that cycle of poverty. And the only way for me to escape a situation like that was to have the physical distance of being in college. I didn't even leave the city, but I went to the other side of the city to go to this college that had gates, for one. But for two, that physical separation of me like staying on campus in the dorm allowed me some mental reprieve from the situation that I grew up in. Like as much as I hated being hospitalized when I was a teen, those are like the best 2 weeks of my teenagedom because of the fact that I was able to physically separate from the environment that I was in. And no one could just show up and harm me in any way. They had to, there was guards. So being on a college campus, having a dorm room where I could live separately from all of that stuff was really, really helpful. It was also really, really helpful that the college had resources like therapy, which was free. It was, or rather in the cost of my tuition, right? But the therapy was not an extra out-of-pocket cost because again, like I said, I couldn't have a job and I didn't have extra money, My mother was not financially supporting me. My father was not financially supporting me. I was on my own. So being able to have access to therapy where I can go weekly to see someone to talk through my past and current issues was really, really helpful. And I never had to worry about my therapist going to looking up my mom's number and calling her. You know what I mean? A lot of people, when they are enmeshed with their family, if their parents allow them to get a therapist in the first place, because that's a whole hurdle. But if your parents allow you to get a therapist in the first place, they want to be all up under that therapist, reading their notes as they write them, because and you just feel like you can't really be honest with this therapist that your mom or your dad picked out for you. You know what I mean? So I got to have that therapy that is so, so crucial to helping you survive the traumatic background that you came from. And it was completely separate from my family. Even when my family members came within close proximity of my therapist, she acted like she didn't even know me. And she dipped out. She never had any desire to speak to them or connect with them or say, hey, I'm Minu's therapist. No, she kept it very professional. And I love that about her. But she also was able to validate a lot of the stuff that I've been gaslit into thinking I was crazy about. So it was immediately helpful in that way, but it was also helpful in the sense that I'm doing something that had not been done before in my family. So I had no blueprint. I had no advice, no guidance about how the hell I was going to survive college. I didn't even know what I was doing at college. I just knew that I had to go to college. So having someone who's a therapist who had been also the first person in the family to go to college was immensely helpful because she got to tell me about all the various resources that were at my disposal. There was a disability advocate at the college as well. So me being someone who was disabled, even though I didn't have like a physical label of it because doctors are shit, I had a disability advocate who can help me, like who could help accommodate me so that I could handle going to these classes and like having this like huge workload that I had. On top of that, even though it was a majority, I think this happens a lot at majority white colleges too, there was like a multicultural department whose job it was to kind of help the students of color, you know, find community, have kind of a safe space so that they can like be around each other and connect with each other. And they became an advocate for me. In the sense of, you know, connecting with my therapist, connecting with the disability advocate. So I all of a sudden found myself having a whole support system that I did not have, that I would not have had if I didn't go to college, to help me survive going to college. You know, these are the people who, when my chronic illness flared up and I literally was bedridden for days at a time, were able to talk to my professors and get me deadline extensions and, you know, make sure that I was getting food so that I could eat so I didn't starve to death. Being unable to walk for days at a time. Like, it was such a huge thing to have that support system. And I don't know if every college has that support system, but I felt that the college that I went to, because there was so many shitty rich kids who was just bumbling their way through college, they had to have a support system in place to make sure they graduated. And I was able to take advantage of that same support system so that I could graduate and that I could survive. And there was career counselors as well. So in addition to the counselor you get to help you with your degree, there was career counselors. One of the career counselors there, I still talk to this woman to this day because she was such a huge help at connecting me. I knew I really wanted to study abroad in Japan. She connected me with the international studies people who helped me, you know, find the resources to get a study abroad that I could apply for with financial aid. Because again, I didn't have the money. But the career counselor also was a huge help in helping me navigate shit. Like, how the fuck do I interview for jobs? Like, how do you do that? Because I had never did that before. And colleges usually don't teach you how to do that. But the career counselors taught me how to interview for jobs. How do you dress like this? How do you use these words? I would practice over and over again with them before I had a job interview. Even after I graduated, I would still call them and say, can you please help me in terms of applying for this job or interviewing for this job? Help me redo my resume, help me do XYZ. Like, they have been such a huge help. And then on top of that, the networking you get to do in college is crazy, especially when you go to a college where it's a lot of rich white kids, because they don't get jobs because they deserve it. They don't get jobs off merit. They get jobs based on who they know. Being able to network with people who are working with all of these different nonprofits, who was working with, who had made all of these connections with people who had previously gone to the college and now were in a position where they knew jobs were hiring. My first job out of college, I got because I had networked with all the Black people in my college. And they knew Black people who had previously gone to my college who were specifically looking to help Black people who went to the college they went to. That's how I got my first job out of college. Now, was it a good job to have? No, not really. But it was a job and it paid me money so that I can get an apartment and pay rent and save up money and all of that stuff. But the point is, I got the job because of the networking that I did. There were so many different events that the college would have as well that would allow me to network with even more people, because the college career services people were constantly reaching out to different nonprofits, different schools, different everything in the city to have them come to the college and make those connections. And to preface this, the high school that I went to, my college never went to that high school. The only colleges that went to my high school were the ones that accepted like really, really low GPAs, really low ACT scores. They were the colleges that would come in and say, like, we will give you a second chance, basically. Because the thought that there could be people who were intelligent or making like high scores on tests at my school was just, I guess, out their realm. The college I ended up going to only went to the rich white kid schools. They went to the schools that were predominantly white, the schools where the kids were learning Japanese and going on all these amazing field trips and getting to study abroad and do gap years before they even went to college. They went to those schools. So me being at this same college as those type of kids allowed me to take advantage of all of these different like networking opportunities that the college would just naturally do to help people succeed as much as possible. And I'm not saying that HBCUs and stuff don't do that. I didn't go to an HBCU, so I don't speak on HBCUs. I'm sure they're great. I didn't have that experience. That's a different experience. I'm not knocking it at all. I'm literally talking about my experience going to this rich white kid school. Even though I financially struggled the whole time, but I was there. And so I got to get access to the same resources and support that they got access to, that allowed me to make the connections that I did as I left college, that allowed me to actually get a job. Because without those connections, I probably would have had to move back in with my parents, because even me not wanting to move back in with my parents after I graduated when I didn't have a job, that my professor, one of my history professors, told me that they knew an English professor who was going to be leaving the country for the summer and needed a house sitter. So I had a place that I could stay. That's just not the level of connection and networking that I would have felt if I went to a large state school that had, 10, 20,000 people at it. You know what I mean? But at this small, like private liberal arts college, because it was small, I got to make such a big impact on the people that I met and that I ran into. There was even events where they taught you how to have fancy dinners. Like, I didn't know that there was salad forks versus regular forks, or the type of knife, or how do you cut a steak. I had never had a steak. So they was telling me, how do you cut steaks? How do you eat the salad? How do you eat the soup? This is what a 3-course meal looks like. Very unseasoned, but this is what they showed us how to have a fancy dinner with wine and desserts and like multiple courses and like all of these things that I just don't feel like I would have gotten at one of those larger schools or at a community college. Because I feel like a lot of community colleges are very focused on getting you those foundational requirements as quickly as possible, which is not a problem per se. But I felt like what I really needed was, I needed to gain the skills that would allow me to separate myself from the other people that would be interviewing for the same job as me. Now, it also would have been nice if I had learned an instrument too, because something about rich white people, they love a piano, they love a violin, I didn't have that, but I was able to pass myself off as somebody who had a better upbringing than I did. Because I feel like a lot of people meet me now and they assume that I had some sort of like privileged suburban upbringing. Maybe it's the way I speak or the way I carry myself, but a lot of people have that assumption about me. A lot of people that I met, even in my hometown, didn't believe I was from my hometown because of the way I spoke, the way I carried myself, the way I behaved. And I feel like the skills that I learned at that college are what allows me to today sit on calls with executives and have conversations where I'm telling them what they should or should not be doing, And I would not be able to do that if I still had the same behavior, mannerisms, or knowledge that I had, that the rest of my family would have. You know, I feel like it really did allow me to escape the cycle of poverty. I mean, I have a house. Like, I'm able to get a job where I can afford, well, afford, yeah, afford, not comfortably afford, but afford a mortgage. And that's a huge, huge thing that I would not have been able to do if I didn't go to college. And it's not fair at all that people have to go into mountains of student loan debt in order to have the same opportunities as the richer, wealthier counterparts. But this is just how it is right now. I will say too, never knock the trades. There is a lack, there's a huge lack as a result of this whole mindset of everyone has to go to college. There is a huge lack of skilled tradesmen. Like, my plumber is somebody who should be retired at this point, and he's probably the best, most skilled plumber that I will ever have, because a lot of the plumbers that are younger than him don't even have the skills or proper certifications. They just say that they're a plumber. You know, it's not the same as it used to be, because there's a lack of skilled people to work in the trades. There's a lack of carpenters. There's a lack of mechanics that have actual education and training. Now, the guy down your street that's just been working on cars his whole life, this is a different thing. But it is a huge, huge issue that we don't have a lot of people who are skilled in the trades to do the work that we need, like HVAC and electricians and plumbers and carpenters. And that's why a lot of new construction homes are being built so shittily, because we don't have a lot of skilled construction workers who can build homes properly. So it is definitely an area where if somebody was like, oh, should I get a trade or go to college? I'd be like, get a trade. You could charge so much money and not have student loan debt. You know, do an apprenticeship, get the trade. I will 100% say that if you were on the fence of that. I knew for me, I could not do a trade because of my chronic illnesses. I don't have the physical body to do like carpentry or, you know, any type of hard labor. I don't have the physical body for that. But a lot of people who are working at Amazon warehouses right now, lifting out in boxes, they could get a trade and make way more money and open their own business. So I would never knock the trades, because we definitely need people doing that. I'm just saying that, yes, college is extremely unfair, and the value of your degree, the value of a lot of people's degrees is not worth it. You know, like the degree that a lot of people walk out of college with does not actually land them a job, because of it is very unfair how we, how companies recruit people, right? The requirements these companies have of us is so fucking high for basic ass work, you know? And I tell people, the job I have now, do I feel like you needed a college degree as much as I feel like you needed Excel experience, or I feel like you needed, you know, I guess maybe depending on the degree, because even with my degree, I'm doing the job that I'm doing, right? And it's really more of like the job I have now, you could do my job if you had a company that was willing to invest in your education for the job. You could never get the education to do my job in college. Colleges don't teach this. It's literally, everything I know has come from years of experience of doing the job and just gradually getting better at doing the job. It has nothing to do with my degree. It's just a thing where a lot of companies now, their bare minimum is that you have a degree and 2 years of experience in something or another. So I would say for a lot of people, college is a scam. A lot of people have a shit ton of student loan debt and no good paying job to show for it. For me, I would say college was worth it, simply because of the fact that I would not have been able to have the life that I have now or escape the cycle of poverty if I did not get physically separated from my family. And then if I did not get to sit in the same rooms as people who had a lot of privilege and a lot of money, so that I can learn the same education that they learned. and that I can have, connect with the same people that they were connecting with and network with the same people they were networking with, learning how these people speak and carry themselves in order to get into the positions that I wanted to get into. All of that was more important. I still love that I studied history, and I would not have changed it. Well, I would have, if I could go back and change it, I would have told myself to do a history/international studies major, only because I found out too late that if I had an international studies major, that would have opened me up to scholarships that would have paid for my student study abroad, as opposed to me taking out more student loans. So I would have done it that way. I would have split it up that way, but I still would have studied history, because I feel like studying things like history and politics and philosophy are the things that allow us to gain the critical thinking skills we need to properly push back against like the oppressive systems. Because I feel like studying things like history and politics and philosophy are the things that allow us to gain the critical thinking skills we need to properly push back against like the oppressive systems that we have in place in this country. And that's why it's so expensive, because they don't want us pushing back against these oppressive systems. They want us to be ignorant and not know what's going on and feel like politics is just way too confusing to even try to go and vote. That's what's important about it. But it is very much a rich man's game. And until you learn how to play that game, you're always going to be trapped in a cycle of poverty. So for me, in my very, very specific situation, at my very, very specific college, with my very, very specific degree, it was worth it. And I would never go back in time and tell myself to do something different, because it was worth it for me. But I recognize it's not worth it for a lot of people. And it's not something that I force on people. It's not something that I judge people for. And it's not something that I tell people you absolutely have to go do this, because you don't absolutely have to do it. You can do a trade and make just as much, if not more money than people who went to college and are still struggling to get a job or get a decent paying job. So that's all I had to say. And for those of you who this is your first semester, or you just now coming back to college, be safe, because every semester meningitis be hidden. Like, it's very common on college campuses to get meningitis. Because I don't know, like, people just not thinking right, or stop sharing drinks with people and making out with people at parties, because that's how you get meningitis. And that is not a fun thing to get. There's way too many people be getting it at college. But yeah, so y'all need to be safe. Take care of yourself, because you deserve it. Eat your food, drink your water, take naps. No one can live in this body but you. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to watch this long video, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye. Also, check out Minu's Mortuary if you are a fan of anything horror, because I'm doing more Attack on Titan videos on there, and then I'm going to do some videos on The Sadness, as well as in the future some other Junji Ito stuff. So if you like horror anime or movies or anything like that, check it out. I got some great stuff planned for that channel. But yeah, bye again.